Good evening. It's a pleasure to welcome Congressman Pete Hoekstra to our campus this evening. Having just commemorated the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, this is a time when those events are still fresh in our memory, yet distant enough for us to gain some perspective on how they affected us as a country and how they continue to influence events. We are extremely fortunate to have Congressman and current United States Senate candidate Pete Hoekstra with us this evening. He represented Michigan's 2nd Congressional District in the United States Congress from 1993 to 2010. In the U.S. House, Representative Hoekstra served on numerous committees, including Education and Labor, Budget, and the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He was instrumental in reforming the intelligence community in response to the terrorist attacks of 2001 and the report of the 9/11 Commission. In his poem, The Names, commemorating the loss of lives 10 years ago, the poet Billy Collins wrote, "So many names, there is barely room on the walls of the heart." As we continue to try to figure out the right way to respond to the tragedy, both emotionally and politically, it is a pleasure to welcome Pete Hoekstra as we advance our dialogue about that day and its lingering consequences. Like you, I look forward to his remarks, American Leadership Redefined in a post-9/11 environment.
You know, much of my time, especially the last 10 years, were very much defined by what happened on 9/11. In honor of the people that died in 9/11, in honor of the people who have sacrificed for this nation, who have sacrificed for you and me over the last 10 years serving in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places to keep us safe, for those troops that are going to be leaving this community within the next week. My commitment, hopefully tonight, will be that I will stay away from political cliches and I will stay away from the 30-second sound bites in remembrance and respect for the events that have happened and how serious the topic is. You know, I hope that the remarks that I have the opportunity to provide you tonight will provide at least a perspective on America post 9/11, and I hope that in the opportunity that we will have for questions, comments, and dialogue after my comments, we can have a mutual respect, recognizing that these are very, very hard issues, that they are important, that there is a broad diversity of opinions, and that as we go through this process, that we recognize that we can learn from each other and each other's perspectives as we all work towards the same common goal. We want a better, stronger, more effective an America that we can be proud of, and we want an America that can continue to be a shining beacon on a hill to the rest of the world. You know, it's amazing to me as, after 9/11, my career in Washington changed. I've had the opportunity early in my career to focus on budget issues, to focus on education and labor issues that I had a passion for. In January of 2001, I had competed for a new job in Washington. I lost, and as I describe it, for all of the wrong reasons. In January of 2001, I found myself on the Intelligence Committee, kind of out of an interest, but not necessarily a passion, but an interest in becoming more involved in learning more about America's role in the world, foreign policy, and national security. 9 months later, as I'm sitting in my office, and my staff knocks on the door and says, "Hey, Pete, turn on TV. I've got some constituents from West Michigan in my office, asparagus farmers. We're talking about the crisis that our asparagus farmers are facing in West Michigan because there are Peruvian imports coming in that are undercutting their market." We turn on TV and you see the first tower is smoking. I don't remember, whether I saw the second plane come live into the second tower or what, but I know that shortly thereafter, I look out my window with my friends from West Michigan, and we look out the window. You look down in the street. They've evacuated the Capitol. The streets are full with people. They've been told to go home. I look out across the building, or that's across the street from my building, and what do we see? I see the plume of smoke that's coming up from the Pentagon. We start hearing the rumors about how many planes there may be and those kinds of things, and you're kind of sitting there and saying, wow, exactly what's happening. Within 2 days, we're at the Pentagon for a memorial and to see what's going on, to see the damage at the Pentagon. Within 7 to 8 days, while they're still looking for survivors at Ground Zero, I have the opportunity to visit Ground Zero, to take a boat up the Hudson, to come off the dock and walk down the streets and see the buildings that have chunks out of them, the windows blown out. Along the side of the streets, you've got the first responders, you've got the firemen, the policemen, the other first responders who are just kind of sitting there leaning against the wall with this a look on their face that I'm not sure that I've ever seen before or that I've ever seen since. It is a look of just a kind of a blank stare for these folks who have been working 24/7 for 7 to 8 days, and you wonder, what does this mean? What does this mean for America? What does this mean for our role in the world? You're looking at an America that in the 1990s, was coming off the collapse of the former Soviet Union, the wall coming down, and it's an America that's riding high. We are the sole superpower in the world, unchallenged in the world, and you're looking at it and saying, wow, in one day, in a couple of hours, in some ways we are brought to our knees, and we've got to reconsider what the threat is. How strong is it? Why do they hate us? Why do they attack us? And as we take a look at redefining American leadership, we haven't answered that question yet. We haven't answered exactly what America's new role is, because we've gone through a very, very difficult period of time as a nation answering those questions. Tonight, what I would like to, as we talk about the political engagement project, I think it's a great project, because if there's something that we need in America, it is more political engagement. We need more people talking about the issues, and we need more people talking about the issues in a substantive way, because these are important. As we take a look at elections and those types of things, and as we take a look at the things going on, it's, when I first got on the Intelligence Committee, there was no interest in my congressional district. It was inside the halls of Washington. It's a pretty big deal to get on the Intel Committee. You get access, you're monitoring the CIA. What do they do? You're one of 21 people in the House that actually gets an insight in what they do. It's kind of like, what can our satellites do from space when they're taking pictures and those kinds of things? But and it's fascinating to learn and to understand and to know what some of our capabilities are. At the same time, you also get a better insight into what the threats are. But what we need to do is we need to have a substantive discussion about the threats that are out there. And let me tell you why. Number one, it's important. Like I said, when I got on the Intel Committee, it's kind of a nice deal in Washington, but it's not a big deal anywhere else. Because Americans too often in our political discourse and the issues that frame our day each and every day, we don't pay much attention to foreign affairs. But if you take a look at many of the defining moments that you'll remember in political or in America's life, they are defined by things that happen to us from the outside. Our engagement with other nations. It's about what happened in Iran with in 1979 when the embassy is held hostage for over 439 days, where we send in a group of helicopters and the number of planes crash and a number of people are killed, and Some would say that that is the thing that, maybe the final thing that brought down the Carter administration in the elections of 1980. You have the barracks bombing in Beirut. You have the first Gulf War. You then have the second, you then have the wars after 9/11. Foreign affairs are critically important to us as a nation, and it is something that is too frequently overlooked. And the end result is because America continues to look inward, is that when we face foreign policy challenges, too often, rather than being proactive and having a strategy to deal with the threats that are out there, we kind of back into a strategy because we are forced by events that are out of our control that we have to respond now, and we haven't had the political discourse, the political discussion, the political debate inside of the country that gives us the confidence that we can move forward with a strategy, knowing that we have a unified country and how we're going to deal with foreign policy. And I think that and I'll talk a little bit about that. You know, the strategy, when we fought the Cold War, you know, went on for 45, 50 years. We had a clearly defined threat. Most of America recognized that the former Soviet Union and the communist system posed a threat to America. And there was a consensus, you know, a consensus kind of like over here that said, you know, we're going to deal with this threat. It doesn't mean that everybody agreed with that, but there was a consensus, basically a consensus that people across the political spectrum and that people within, you know, inside of the country accepted the dynamic and accepted the strategy of confronting, containing, and ultimately defeating the Soviet Union. We didn't necessarily always agree on what the tactics would be. There was always some debate within, you know, will we have this missile program in Europe or will we not, or will we, you know, how big does the military have to be, and these kinds of things. But the overall strategy, the overall vision of containing, confronting, and defeating communism was something that was broadly accepted within the public and within the political regime. By the time we got to 9/11, we didn't have that because we didn't understand the threat. We've been spending much of the last 10 years trying to define that. The first thing then is we need to have this political discourse and this political discussion on American leadership post 9/11, because foreign policy and how we respond to this threat is absolutely important to building a consensus so that we can move forward confidently in re-identifying what we want America's role to be. So it's important.